Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so in the last video, we saw how to read from a PHP file using AJAX, but let me really explain what's going on here with a few changes to the code. So I really want you to understand what's happening here so that you can make corrections of your own if you need to. So the thing is, we have some JavaScript in here, and this is the home view.php right there. So this JavaScript is only activated when it reaches the user's device. So the user's phone or the user's PC, once the code reaches there, it's activated as JavaScript. So which means now, if you try and send some data, you can make a request behind the scenes. So in the same way, when we refresh a page, we're actually making a request to the server. Now, instead of having to refresh the page or change the URL, you can still do it in the background using what is known as AJAX. So that's what we are doing here. So this is known as an XML HTTP request. So that's why we're creating a new one here and assigning it to this variable. And so all we are doing here is we're adding an event listener to listen for whenever the event changes, when the ready state changes of this HTTP request we have created. So in JavaScript, you can add event listeners to things so that you can listen for specific events. And then once you get those events, you can do stuff with that event. You can either name a function to do it, or you can just add a function right here, which is an anonymous function because it doesn't have a name. And then whatever is in that function will run when this event occurs, right? So if you want to learn more about JavaScript, I do have a course on my channel. You can check it out. Basics of JavaScript, I think it's called. I'm not really sure, but it's there in the playlist. So once we add an event listener, it means we are listening for any ready state change. And then every time the ready state change happens, we run something. And so once we add an event listener, it means it starts listening for those event changes. And so the moment we open this thing, a ready state change occurs because AJAX, this object here, has 4 states. So it's got state 1, state 2, state 3, and 4. Now the only one we're interested in is state 4, because 4 means data was sent and the whole operation is done, right? So when we initialize the thing, the ready state change happens. I think it happens when we open, there's a ready state change. When we send, there's a ready state change. And then when we receive data back, there's a ready state change as well. So these are the events we are looking for. So in our case, we don't want to do anything between state 1, 2, and 3 here, because this is just initialization, some other thing I don't remember, and sending data. And we only want to do something when we receive data, which is on the ready state number 4. So this is why in here, to make our code a little bit better, we have to put an if statement that checks for a specific ready state. So in here, I can say something like if AJAX. Now, in order for me to show, before I even do this, what I can do here, I can say console.log ajax.status here. I can do this, right? ajax.status. Then this will show me the status at that point. So whenever the status changes, we will see a console.log. So what I will do here is there's get data here. This function has to run somehow. We need an event that will run this this thing here. So what I'll do is temporarily I will create an event listener for a button of some kind, and then that will activate the thing. Now I want a button that's wait, what do I do here? Now we can, with JavaScript, we can literally put an event on anything here. We can put an on-click event, a hover event, all sorts of events. You can Google all events that are available. So any of these will do just fine. So I can get, let's say, even this, items, text, right there. Let me try and find that. So I'll get this function name and tell it to run whenever someone clicks on that text. So that text says, where is that text anyway? It says items. So let me search. I pressed Ctrl F here and searched for items, and it's case sensitive here, so I should put a capital I, and there it is. So this H3 right here, all I need to do is put a space in there and say on click, like this. Now if you type the word on there, you get all these suggestions, right? So all these are events that you can put stuff on, like this. So on cancel, on can play. So depending on the type of element you are on, that will determine what events will work there. Because for example, if I put the on play event here, because this element is not an audio player or a video player, so that event will never fire because there's never a time when we'll have an on play on this element. So you need to test all these and see which ones actually can work for the element you are selecting. But on click literally works on anything, since everything is clickable unless it's not visible somehow. So anything visible has an on click event. So here I'll just put the function name inside like so, which means this will run when this thing is clicked. Now you have to keep in mind that every time you write an event listener like this, or on click on something, whatever you put in here is JavaScript. So you don't really need to put this. You can put any JavaScript in here. You can put the entire code that you want to run right here. It's just not clean, a clean way to do it. So instead we will just call a function which has the code instead of putting all the code right here. But just keep in mind that whatever you add here is actual JavaScript. So anything you can do in script tags, you can do right here. Okay, so here we'll just call a function. That's all we're doing on the click event. So what I'll do is, let me go back here and let's refresh. Let's go to the console so we can inspect what's going on. So the console is nice and clean, but the moment I click on this item, click, and you see some action. So here what you see is the status. There's status 0 and status 200. So I actually got the wrong item here. What I wanted to check for is not the status, but the ready state. Yes. Because that's what I'm looking for here. On a ready state change event, I want to know the ready state of this item. So this item dot ready state. Okay. So now in JavaScript, whenever two words are joined together, there's this camel case going on. So instead of me putting ready state like this, there's a capital S over here. So it's ready and state. This way you know that there are two items. So whenever there are two words joined together, you see this system. It always starts with a small letter, but every other word starts with a capital letter after that. You can see this right here where it says add event listener. So the add starts with a small letter, and then we have a large capital letter here for the second word, and then a capital letter for the third word. So the more words you connect, it's just like this. Same thing here. XML is capitalized for all of it because it is. HTTP and then request. So you see this happening everywhere. Now, the reason this doesn't have that is because this is not an item of AJAX, but it's an event. So events, I don't think they're case sensitive. I'm not sure about that, but yeah. So whenever you're using a dot notation, just keep in mind whatever word you put here should be camel case like this if there are two words connected together. So I'm looking for the ready state of the AJAX here. Okay, so bear with me here for a second, and let's go down here. I will refresh, and let me clean out the console by clicking delete, and then I'll click on the item, and you will see that there are numbers right here. So first of all, there's ready state 1, which happens before we send anything. And then there's an HTTP request that was done right here. And then there's number 2, number 3, number 4. So 1 happens before we send any information, and then the rest of them happen after. But the number 4 means everything, the process is done, because number 4 is the last one. So that's when we want to check for received data. Now, if you check here, there's this HTTP XHR, which is the HTTP request we do in the background, which is AJAX. If you click on it, you see a bit more information. There's status here, which is 200. 200 means everything went well. So we want to check for two things. We want to either check for status 200. Okay, first of all, we check for number 4, and then we check if everything was okay. That's when we can continue to do our operations, right? Okay, so just to show you what happens here. Now, let me explain a little bit. So explanations are boring, but they're important for you to understand, because then you can do your own edits. That's the most important thing to me, is that you are able to edit the code that I give you, because otherwise I'm not teaching you anything. So it's really important to understand what's going on. So if you notice here in JavaScript, so I have a function here, which is pretty standard, just like we have in PHP. But then here on in JavaScript, we have this dot notation here. So let me explain where this comes from. Then we have these things here. So in JavaScript, everything is literally an object. So what this means is that everything in JavaScript, think of everything as an array. Every object, every item is an array. Now, instead of array, replace that with object. So an object is just a collection of things. That's all it is. So when I create this item here, okay, this is an object that I've created, because like I said, everything in JavaScript is an object. So let's try and create an object in JavaScript for a second here. So let me divert a little bit here. I'm just going to say var, because that's how we create items. So var obj, so I'm just going to call it obj, is equal to, and then I put two curly brackets like this. Now curly brackets here mean this is an object, provided it's empty in the here, but it still is an object. So I'm creating this object. So now another way to create an object is to simply put name and for example, I can say name and then put a full colon like this. Oh, wait. Yes, actually. Name, full colon, and then I put a value over here like so. And then I'll put a comma and then put another item and then put its value. Numbers don't need quotes like this. And then other, you can put comments here or something. So you get the idea. It's just like an array, right? Just like an array in PHP, right? Now, if I do console.log, because that's how we tell the console to show us something like this. So I'm doing console.log of object, meaning it's going to show me what's contained in object here. So if I now refresh, you will see that there's an object in here, with the values that I showed here. Now, if I want to get a specific item from here, I can just say object.age, for example, right? So this is where the dot notation comes from here, okay? Because everything is an object, and this is how we access items from an object. So if I say object.age like this, I'm going to refresh, and you'll see there's only a 24 there instead of the whole object, because I'm getting a specific item from there. So that's how this comes on. Now, the beauty of objects is, now I can do this to make it more clear what I am adding to this object, like so, right? It still works the same way. Now, the beauty of objects is that I don't need to just put values. I can actually put a whole function here, right? So I can put a name, because it needs to be a name and a value, or a key and a value. So let me put a key, for example, my func, like so. That's just the key, right? And then here I will put a function. I'll say is equal to function instead of just an object. So this can be a function like this, and I can even put curly braces like this and put some more code. And then I can put another function. So it's like this, another func, right? And then put a function here again, like so, and do that. Very, very neat stuff. So now I have two functions in this object like this. So let me show you here. If I put an alert here and say alert func1 like this, and then I go down here and say alert func2. Okay, so instead of just saying object.age, now I can say object.myfunc like this. Now, because this is a function, I have to put the curly braces, because in an event where I need to supply some variables here, I can do that there. But for now, running this function just shows me an alert for which says func1. So now, instead of saying console.log, because we just want to run this function, we are going to do this and just say obj.myfunc like that, okay? And then if I come here and refresh, you see that my func1 has worked just fine. So that's how this dot notation comes from. So of course, if I do this, it's going to run this function as well in a similar manner. Okay, or if I want, I can actually call this function from somewhere else. So I can cut this and go up here to where I had put item right there. Instead of get data, I can tell it to run my func like this. Now keep in mind, this is JavaScript in here, so this semicolon is fine in there, but it's not needed, but it's fine. So refresh, and then now if I click on that, you see I get my func1 like that. So this is how things work in JavaScript. This is why you will see things like this. So what this is saying is that inside this XHL HTTP request, there is a function called open and another function called send, but then add event listener is also a function which can add an event to this. Now I can prove this by doing a console.log. So let me remove this part here. Oh, before I do that, what else did I want to show here? Yes, in an object here, you can do something like, if I want to create another item here, I can just say obj.name is equal to, and then I put a name there like so. Now the thing is, name already exists, right? So I can replace this value by doing that, or I can just say dot job or something, I don't know, whatever the job is, and put in it. Now job is not an item that's already here, but the moment I do this, it will be added to this. So that's how you add new items, just like that, inside objects. So keep in mind that everything you're using here is the same for everything else in JavaScript, because everything is literally an object in JavaScript. So to prove this, I can do this. Once we create the AJAX request here, before we do any of this, what I'll do is a console.log right there, of the AJAX item. So let's see what exactly it contains. So I'm going to refresh, clear out the console, and then click there to activate that function. And then you can see here we have this XML HTTP request. It has been logged right there. And then, I'm also logging these items which I don't want to log, just to remove the confusion. Let me refresh, clear out the console, click. Okay, so there we go. So we have this item. Now if I click on this, you will see that this item has a lot of stuff. It's got events here, like on abort, on error, on load. All these are items associated with this thing. Then there's a response here. Okay, now we didn't use response, but we used response text. However, response is also one item here. If I scroll down, I will see response text. Okay, there's also response JSON if you have JSON data. Then there's this response type. There's a status. There's a status text, a timeout. There's also stuff that you can do if you're uploading something. So in here, if I click on upload, there are events for uploading. For example, on progress, on load start. So all this, like for example, on progress would tell you how much data has been sent versus what is supposed to be sent. Then you can use this to create a progress bar, for example, if you want. So you'd have to say ajax.upload.onProgress or something like that, right? This is an event. So on progress, you can do something to show the user what's going on. So as you can see, there's a lot of stuff going on here. Now, there should be other functions down here like .open. You see that? Okay, .open, .send. These are inside the so-called prototype, but this is a topic for another day. But these are the functions that are common and work in here. That's why I wrote .open and then .send here. So that's where these come from. They are actual functions. As you can see, the same notation that I used. Let me zoom in here a little bit so you can get to see this properly. So there's .open here, and it's an actual function. So you see function open right there. Function, right? So that function does something. There's a send function here, and there's a lot of other functions here. These are not functions because they don't have brackets like this. You can see that. This one is a function. This one is a function as well. So it's just an object with functions and variables. That's it. Okay. So when we do something like .send and then we put brackets, you know it's a function. When I do something like ajax.readyState, you see here, it's a value because there's no brackets here. So it's not a function, it's just a value that I'm looking for, right? So hopefully this was clear enough, and then we can begin organizing our code properly in the next video.